Would you rather the club have shown that little bit more ambition and maybe gone out and paid a little bit more money out than they were wanting to originally this season or this summer, to go and get that next player that would have made us an excellent team? Or would you rather, what we ended up doing, which is essentially sticking and, I suppose, looking after the future sustainability of the football club in a more sensible manner? Danny, if I come to you first.
Yes, it's a difficult one because, like, without knowing what the budget is, and a lot of people online and Twitter and the hotel end seem to know how much money Kelvin has and how much he's got to how much he's got to throw at things. So it's hard to kind of understand the situation without getting the exact numbers or how much we spent. I know Kelvin did say that the budget got increased a couple of times during the window, which we'd not heard before yet, to allow us to sign some of the players. I know we were in for, there was rumours that we were doing some sort of last minute deal or trying to get one across the line at the last minute as an attacker and stuff. But again, we don't know. It's quite ambiguous as to what that is. I almost wonder whether the start of the season made Kelvin sit back and think, actually, we might be all right until January based on the thing. I think if we'd have lost the whole of August, lost 4 or 5 games in a row, maybe would we be looking at things a little bit differently? I don't know. But because we had the Posh win, everyone's in high spirits because we got the Lincoln result, because we got the Cheltenham win as well. Did he look at it and think, actually, take a view on it? We'll see what we can do. We'll be all right till January, and see it again then. There is always the part of a football fan's brain that thinks there's more, that there can be more. We can push on that little bit. And I think that's what Neil was saying. It's not let's go and splash out on this sort of wondrous signing, whoever it is people think it's going to be. It's, can we push a little bit more to try and get one over the line that's going to help us a lot and to help us into the top half? I think the ambitions for this season are probably to stay up, and that's where he's looking at it now. He's thinking, this is the ambition to stay up. This is what it's going to take for us to stay up. And he's not thinking any further like that about that in his mind, which I think is okay, because we're all looking at the start of the season, think, fine, stay up, but have a plan. And I think we always seem to get to this point in League One where we're battling relegation. We have been going down, but when we've stayed up, what's the next step? And I don't entirely think that we've got enough. Again, without knowing the numbers, we can't tell. And I just get that feeling that we're going to, under Kelvin specifically, maybe until the East stands built, just be a case of let's stay up, let's survive, let's be sustainable, rather than let's go and have a go at the league, which is frustrating as a fan, for sure. But I think it is pretty sensible considering what's come before. Again, some things can change, because if this is, again, like, to me, if it's a bigger name manager, is Kelvin getting challenged more? It's John Brady has got a good friendship with Kelvin and everything like that, but there is part of me that does wonder, does he still see John Brady as that kind of someone who's come in through, like Samo was? He's a club man. He cares so deeply about the club, but he's not that kind of manager who's going to knock on his door and demand stuff. Do you know what I mean?
That's where Calderwood comes in, though, isn't it? Because Calderwood isn't that, and Calderwood is a bit more experienced in terms of, he's managed other clubs, Nottingham Forest including. Obviously, he's had a stint as our manager before, a successful stint as well. So I don't know. I think that going back to what you said about how at the start, before a ball had been kicked, the ambition was, and I agree, to just stay up. But we all said, didn't we, that we felt like we'd be fairly comfortably safe. So I think my prediction was 16th. You were happy, Danny, with anything above the line, I know, and that's fine. But a lot of people had us more than just above the line. We were above it, fairly comfortably. And I then when the game, the season starts and the games are being played and we start getting results and we see the way that we're playing as well, I think that means that your ambition has to be fluid, and everything needs to be looked at in context of the current, way things are going. So while I get your point that, the ambition was always to just stay up this season, and that's frustrating that's all it is.
I don't particularly think it's
I don't
frustrating.
think it is.
To me, it's the just word, I think, can be construed a few different ways. Like, I don't think just surviving. I think that kind of puts in ahead of, we'll just scrape it up. I don't, and to me, it's surviving, but surviving well, and surviving, playing as we did last season, and having that momentum, bringing the fans back into it again, which I think we have seen at home games have been so much better in terms of atmosphere and stuff like that. Bringing the fans along again and having these big moments like the Posh game and things like that. It's staying up, but staying up in a good manner. That's not just kind of doing it by luck because there's 4 teams worse than you. It's doing it because you're better than 5-6 teams. And there's a little bit of a slight difference of mentality of that. And that's where we've got to get to next, is where what I was kind of putting at is like, how do we then move on to the next level where the likes of Stevenage are at the minute in terms of, without that extra investment. And I don't think we've quite got that at the moment, whether it's the East Stand holding it back, whether it's what holding it back, I don't know. But there's that general perception that that's, we do need extra investment if we are going to go into the sort of higher echelons of the league. And I will say echelons, Charles.
It's not echelons. Okay, fair enough.
Echelons. That's not the word.
You say it the way you want to say it, and I'll say it properly. That's fine. No, one of the things that actually I'd really like, not us, me, you, and the 3 of us to do, but the fan base to maybe get away from, is viewing Stevenage as a side to be trying to emulate as such. I understand why Stevenage gets used as the example, because they've come up with us and have, by the looks of it, splashed a bit of cash, got in, players that really, really have taken them up a gear, taken them up a level, and look at them sitting pretty at the top of League One, albeit by just 1 point, and played a game more than pretty much every other team in the league. But they're up there. On merit, right?
7 games in though, that could turn.
Well, this is it. But well, this is the thing, right? It is so early days. It's very early days for that, and I appreciate that. I'm kind of going back on what I was saying about, everything's fluid, and you've got to look at your ambition in terms of what is actually the current context of the situation. But I think John Brady said on Tuesday night after the defeat to Oxford in the Nobody Cares Cup, that Oxford are what 2 years ahead of us in their journey. I can't think of the word that he used, and journey is so wanky. I apologize, everybody. 2 years on in their evolution, in their whatever it is, and that they're more of a team, I think, that we should be looking to kind of reach and close the gap to. Not Stevenage, because Stevenage have basically just been able to throw a bit of money in. They've kept the manager, and they're doing things the way that they do. I'd rather be looking at a team like Oxford, who came up in 2015-16, have managed to stay in League One, and in that time they've been in the playoffs once, if not twice, for League One. I know that they had a dodgy year, maybe the year before last, but they've been a pretty stable League One club for those 3 or 4 years, whereas we haven't. We've yo-yoed, as we know that we always do. And there's that thing in my mind that sort of thinks we could have maybe done a Stevenage by going and getting, just sort of not tearing the budget up as such, but just going, right, okay, we're good. We could be better if we go and get this one, to steal Keith Curl ism here, one piece of the jigsaw, go and get that final piece. And we could be, sitting here having beaten Wickham. So we'd be 3 points better off. We might have turned that Lincoln draw into a win, or, games that come at us in the future that are similar to that, we might actually end up winning and gaining more points from. I don't know. It's hard because you're talking about, as Danny said, Jeffy, you're talking about stuff that you don't have the full facts for. Like, we don't know how much the budget actually is. We don't know, how much money that the ownership actually have, outside the context of the wage budget. And we also don't know what other teams are willing to pay on top of what we are already. For all we know, we might have tried to assign somebody on transfer deadline day by making them the highest paid player at the football club, but still another team came in and offered more. For all we know, that's what happened.
Yeah. I have quite strong feelings about this whole situation, really, and the whole topic in general. I think there's a few things that we probably should consider when we're talking about it that have changed massively over maybe the last 2 decades in football. I think football's a really different game to what it was 20 years ago in terms of finance. We know that. The gap between the leagues is bigger. I also think that COVID had a real financial impact on not just lower league clubs, but every club really, but particularly clubs that were in that playoff race as well during that time, because that was money again that was being added on. I also think that the addition of teams like Wrexham into the league, by the way, there's nothing wrong with them. I'm just using them as an example.
They've got money, is what you mean.
Exactly, yeah. So bringing in that huge investment is as catapulted the lower leagues really into a world that they weren't really in even 4 or 5 years ago, in where the finances are so much more complex because of the fact that they have spiraled so significantly, which on a side issue I think the FA need to get a handle on, really, because it's becoming, I think, a bigger beast than what we can handle in football in the particular lower leagues, and I think we're losing the purity of the game a little bit as a result. However, because of all of that, what you don't want to do is be in a position where you overspend unsustainably. If you look at the likes of Yeovil and Southend, I don't want to be them. And I don't really agree with this short-sighted approach to let's spend some more money, because actually, regardless of whether we do that or whether we don't, this is a business. And I know people don't like hearing that, but that is what football is now. And what we have in Kelvin, as far as we are aware, is someone who knows money and has got business sense. And we know that because of what's gone on in the last 7 years. I think it's really crucial that we are ambitious. And like he said, we've upped the budget a little bit within the window, and I think that's okay, because actually, probably like you, they can see that they've got a good set of players, that they can see that they're on this evolutional journey, and it looks like we're going to be able to sustain playing the style. Whether that means sustaining in League One, it's irrelevant really, but sustaining that style of play and that culture and philosophy within the club. I would not want to stretch ourselves to a point where it's unsustainable, because actually we're the ones that suffer in that. In 5 years' time, if he runs out of money, we're the ones that are there stood with the buckets at Sixfields trying to raise money because we've got a tax bill that we can't pay. So I don't like this short-sighted version of football fans where they're like, we need to spend this money to get into the playoffs. No, we don't. We need to survive this year. And that's great. And we always said, before any of this budget stuff started, or we got any of these ideas before the season started, it was like, just survive, and the bonus is anything extra. That needs to still be the case. That doesn't mean we can't be ambitious and head for the playoffs if we're doing that well, but it's with what we've got. And then the next year, which is so much harder, and we've proven in the last few decades that the second year seems to be where we come unstuck. Let's get that out of the way first, shall we?